Hello and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for November 30th. My name is Scott and I work for Adafruit on CircuitPython. Adafruit is an open source hardware and software company based out of New York, although a number of us are remote. And CircuitPython is software that runs on the open source hardware that Adafruit produces, and non-Adafruit hardware as well, basically on small, inexpensive computers called microcontrollers. CircuitPython's goal is to bring programming to beginners by making it really, really easy to use inexpensive microcontroller-based hardware to do all sorts of things that interact with the physical world. This is a meeting that we happen every week at Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. If you want to join the meeting, go ahead and join the Adafruit Discord server, which is adafru.it/discord. We're there all week. This meeting happens in the CircuitPython voice channel. If you want to know when it happens, we do sometimes switch away from Mondays, and the holidays will be different as well. So go ahead and subscribe to the calendar, which is available. A link to the calendar is available in the notes. So take a look at that. This meeting is run in 5 parts. The first part is community news, which is a kind of a preview of things that are happening with CircuitPython around the internet. After community news, we then have the state of CircuitPython libraries in Blinka, which is a kind of objective perspective on how the project is going. And we do that in 3 subparts. After that, we have Hug Reports, which is we do as a round robin. Hug Reports is a chance for everybody to say thank you to folks for the work they've been doing within the community. And and the way that it works is that I will start and then we'll go through the list of folks in the voice channel. If you don't want to speak up or you don't have a mic or for any reason, just let us know you're lurking. If you have notes that you'd like me to read off, please drop them in the note stock. The note stock is available for the next week's meeting. If you go into the CircuitPython text channel and hit the pin icon at the top, there's a link to the note stock there. And so, yeah, let us know if you're lurking. I'll skip over you. If not, I'll hand the quote-unquote mic over to you, and you'll have a chance to say thank you to folks. The section after Hug Reports is status updates. It's done as a round robin as well, and it is a chance for you to spend a couple minutes talking about what you've been working on and what you plan on working on in the coming week. It's really good for just keeping in sync with what everyone is doing and giving tips or tricks to other folks who are doing something perhaps related to things that you've done in the past. Finally, we have an In the Weeds section, which is a chance for us to say a chance to have discussion about just any sort of different things. It's a lot more freeform, a lot more open-ended. If you have topics you'd like to talk about in the weeds, then please hop in the note stock and add them along with your username into the weeds so that we can hand the mic to you to lead the discussion. And with that, I should say, trying to think of things. If you want to support CircuitPython development, support Adafruit by going to adafruit.com and purchasing stuff there. If you are listening to this on Monday the 30th, we do have a 15% discount code available on CircuitPython stuff on adafruit.com, so you can check that out. I'm scrolling up to find the details. I think it's Ada Thanks, ADATHX. Just enter that at checkout and it gets, looks like 20% off CircuitPython stuff, 15% off items store-wide. So check that out if you're in the meeting now or listening to it today. And I think that's it. Just a reminder, if you do want to speak up and you're new to the meeting, you will have to be in the CircuitPythonistas role. So just ask in the CircuitPython text channel to have that, and we'd love to add you. The meeting's recorded. It's posted as a podcast and also posted as a video along with the notes. So if you are checking this out later, know that there's a note stock with time codes that allow you to skip around. And with that, let's do community news. Thank you to whoever put community news in here. First up, we have deep sleep support coming to the ESP32S2 CircuitPython. Let's see what it says. Deep sleep support coming to the Adafruit MagTag was made for deep sleep thanks to an always-on e-ink display. Thanks to a new pull request, we're getting the beginnings of light and deep sleep support. We can get down to 250 microamps on the MagTag when in deep sleep, which will let the board run for weeks at a time. Check it out and subscribe to the PR to get notifications when it gets merged into main. And they are testing it with data from covidtracking.com. Hackster.io also has a current article summarizing the latest on CircuitPython's deep sleep support on the ESP32S2 at Hackster.io. Next up, GUI 0 and CircuitPyUI, a lightweight graphical user interface libraries for Python and CircuitPython. GUI 0 is a Python 3 library for creating simple graphical user interfaces, GUIs, on Linux, Windows, Mac, and Raspberry Pi, with a link there to GitHub.io. If you're looking for a similar concept framework for microcontrollers, see CircuitPyUI with a GitHub link there as well. Next up, we have info on developing the NAU 7802 24-bit ADC Featherwing, with some pictures there. Testing a custom NAU 7802 24-bit ADC Featherwing in STEMMA Qt connected clue. Using a device library developed in CircuitPython, it measures up to 2 load cells connected to the custom Featherwing, with a link to Twitter there from Cedar Grove. Next up, we have a stock ticker with CircuitPython. This is a stock ticker with an Adafruit matrix portal, a possible Christmas gift idea, and a beautiful wooden case with both a Adafruit forums link and a Twitter link. Thank you to Jeff for posting those in the chat. Next up, we have a second reminder. CircuitPython Monday, big sale today on CircuitPython hardware. Use the code ADATHANKS, ADATHX, to get 20% off CircuitPython boards and 15% off items store-wide. And lastly, these are just a preview of all the good content that goes in the CircuitPython weekly newsletter. It's a community-run newsletter emailed every Tuesday morning. You can go to adafruitdaily.com/categories/CircuitPython to see the archives. It highlights the latest Python on hardware-related news from around the web, including CircuitPython, Python, and MicroPython developments. To contribute your own news or project, edit next week's draft on GitHub by going to github.com/adafruit/CircuitPython-weekly-newsletter. There's a drafts folder there that you can find the latest draft in. And there's also a tip there for editing files in the repo. You don't need to clone it or anything. You can just edit it right through your browser. And if you have any articles, please either do it through PRs, or if you are overwhelmed by that fact, you can always tag @an_engineer on Twitter, which is ANNE_engineer on Twitter, or email anb@adafruit.com. And as always, thank you to Anne for putting the newsletter together. And that's it for community news. Next up, we have State of CircuitPython libraries in Blinka. As I said earlier, this is an objective view of the status of the project, as wide as a project as it is. I'll do overall, and then we'll go into the 3 parts, the core, the libraries, and Blinka. So first up for overall, we had 28 pull requests merged from 27 different authors, which is epic. Some new folks who I don't recognize: B. Gestert, Doug Burke, Ayoma Prod. We've seen E. Hershey, Anton 2, St. Gimp, Danny BD, Sporeball, Skur92, Gadgetoid, James Bowman are all folks that I don't see frequently on this list, at least. And we had 9 reviewers, so thank you to all our reviewers. And again, as always, reviewers are our bottleneck for being able to handle PRs. So if you're looking to level up, you're looking to contribute, want to become a reviewer, please let us know. We're happy to help you do that. It's mainly taking a look at the code to make sure that it all makes sense, and then also testing it on hardware. So we're always looking for more reviewers. Issues wise, we had 14 closed issues by 8 people and 13 open by 13 people. So we're net down 1, which is really awesome. And we have lots of people involved, 8 and 13 for each of those. So yeah, it's getting more and more people involved, which is very, very exciting. Okay, let's talk about the core. So on the core side, we had 10 pull requests merged from 17 different authors, which I think is an artifact of the translations. So a pull request can have multiple authors if it includes commits from multiple people, which the translation stuff kind of joins into one pull request. So I think that's why. And Jeff agrees with me. We had 4 reviewers, so thank you to all our reviewers there. And we're always looking for core reviewers as well. So if you're interested, let us know. We have 24 open pull requests, which is still a lot, but not as much as we had last week. I think we hit 30 last week, which is kind of a lot. So it's good that we're making our way through that, and we're going to continue to do that. We do have kind of a backlog that we should take a look at. A number of those, let's see, 1, 2, 3 are more than 100 days old, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 are 12 or 13 are 10 or more days old. So if you have an open pull request and it's kind of like in limbo, please go back and check. And if you're waiting on a reviewer and they haven't gotten back to you in like 24 hours or 4 days, given the Thanksgiving holiday, please politely ask them to take another look. Let's get through those. Issues-wise on the core, we had 4 closed issues by 3 people and 4 open by 4 people, so we're net even, which is good, for a total of 340 open issues, which you can see in the Adafruit, github.com/adafruit/CircuitPython/issues. We track how we're doing in terms of handling the incoming issues by assigning them milestones. We had -2 issues not assigned a milestone, which I believe is probably that we closed 2 issues without assigning a milestone. That would be my guess. We had 3 open issues for 60X, so those are the ones that we really should take a look at. Those are issues that are on our current stable release that we probably want to fix. So yeah, doing pretty good overall, I would say. Not too bad, but we should keep an eye on that. So the overview, we have 6.1 beta 1 out, which is good. And I expect us to do a beta 2. We'll probably get the deep sleep stuff that Dan's been doing in that beta, which will be very exciting. And what we'll see after the deep sleep stuff is we'll see kind of a lot of related pieces come in to the picture as well. So it's an exciting time for sleep and low power in CircuitPython. 6.0, the stable release, is generally pretty good. There's just those few issues that have come up. It's still good. We should recommend people either trying 6.1 beta or 6.0 stable. Of course, as always, if you're using the ESP32S2, please use the latest, either the absolute newest from S3 or the beta 1. Don't bother with the stable release. It's not stable for the S2. Okay. And with that, let's hand it over to Kattni for the libraries.
Thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
So this covers all of the Adafruit CircuitPython libraries, which is every library that is Adafruit_CircuitPython_. We had 18 pull requests merged from 12 different authors. Thank you to everyone who submitted a PR, and 7 reviewers. Thank you to everyone who reviewed. The oldest pull request that was merged was 22 days old, which is good. Most of them were 0 or 1 days old. So that means we're keeping up with current pull requests, but we're also getting through a couple older ones. We currently have 34 open pull requests. And again, that's across all of the Adafruit CircuitPython libraries. We have 9 closed issues by 7 people and 9 open by 9 people. So we were net 0 change with 238 open issues. 9 of those are good first issues. If you're interested in any of this, or if you're interested in contributing to CircuitPython, writing Python code, You can go to circuitpython.org/contributing, which was having some issues from the middle of October until about a week ago, but has been fixed. So all that information's up to date now. And it has a list of open pull requests, a list of open issues, and a list of library infrastructure issues. The open issues are able to be searched by label. So if you're new to contributing, new to writing Python, that sort of thing, look for a good first issue. If you want something that's a little more complicated, search bug or enhancement. And if you're new to Git and GitHub, we have a guide on contributing to CircuitPython using Git and GitHub, so don't let that intimidate you. And we are always available to answer questions. So if you want to contribute, this is a great way to get started, as well as taking a look at all the open pull requests, seeing if any of them, if you have hardware for any of them, test them. If you want to just check out the code for stylistic or content sort of stuff, leave a comment on the PR and let us know that you did that. Anything like that always helps. The more assistance we have, the more PRs we can process. We didn't have any new libraries in the last 7 days. We did have a number of updated libraries. Those are listed in the notes if you are interested. Overall, we're continuing work on the libraries. We're seeing new libraries as we get new hardware, which is excellent on all counts. And we're seeing updates to the CircuitPython community bundle, which is really excellent to see. The CircuitPython community bundle is libraries contributed by community members for hardware that Adafruit doesn't necessarily support, or helper libraries for things that Adafruit doesn't necessarily support. So if it's an Adafruit CircuitPython library, obviously it's something that we would support. But if you write a library for a piece of hardware that Adafruit doesn't carry and you want it to be available to other folks, you can submit it to the community bundle. And we've been seeing a lot of updates to the community bundle lately, both updates to current things that are in it and new additions. And so that's been really amazing to see. And that's where we are with the libraries.
Awesome. Thank you, Kattni. Next up, we have Melissa talking about the state of Blinka.
Hello, Blinka is our CircuitPython compatibility layer for Raspberry Pi and other single board computers. And this week we had 0 pull requests merged. There are currently 6 open pull requests, and there was 1 closed issue by 1 person and 0 open by 0 people, leaving a net of 47 open issues. There were 2,355 PyPI downloads in the last week, and we currently are supporting 60 boards. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have Hug Reports. Hug Reports is a chance for us to say thank you to folks for the work that they've been doing in the community. This is very open, so if you have anyone that you'd like to recognize, please do that. We'd love to hear about it. This is a round robin. As I said earlier, the meeting is recorded, so if you don't want your voice recorded, or you don't have a mic, or just nothing to say, let us know you're lurking. If you'd like me to read notes off for you, let you say that you're lurking, and put the notes in the notes doc. I'll read those off for you. And with that, I'll get started and then circle around to the top. So I have just 2 main points. First, a Hug Report to Dan for the hard work and thought on the deep sleep. And then I noticed that the PR was out, so I'm excited to review that today. And also, thanks to the new folks, Critic and Dondo Yonderboy, for helping folks on the Discord server, specifically in help with CircuitPython. So thank you to those new folks. I know there's other folks that are helping as well, but that list just gets longer and longer. And with that, let's go up to Brent.
Group hug to everybody involved with CircuitPython, especially as we go into 2021. And hug to Dan specifically for work on the Deep Sleep API. I'm excited to start using it with IoT projects.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. Next up is Dan.
Oh, hold on. I'm scroll backwards. Thanks to Tack, who's I asked him some questions about status questions in TinyUSB, whether you could detect whether the cable was connected or not, or whether you're connected but disconnected or about to connect. And he added a new status API call, and he started doing some more work on the ESP32S2 TinyUSB support. which is not quite. It's not quite there for the status that we want, and it's not clear that we can have the status we want. Sometimes a number of USB peripherals, they can detect connect but not disconnect, unfortunately, which is really sad, but he's working on it. Thanks to you, Scott, and also to Lady Ada for a number of discussions about the Sleep API, which has a lot of edge cases when things go wrong. And so we're working on those. And also Mark Gambler was really interested in trying it, and I gave him a UF2, which he tried, and he had some comments about Sleep 2, which were helpful. And thanks to Jeff for continuing to always think about how we can make CircuitPython smaller in our firmware builds. And one of the things he tried was a test version of GCC 10 to see how it would work. And he's also took out a little used feature in the power exponentiation operator that might help save some things. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. All right. Next up, we have notes from David Glaude, who says, Hug report to 560, Eric Hess for completely rewritten PM25 UART. Hug report to Nom Nom Alexander Hagerman for the Circuit Roomba library. And hug report to Foamy Guy for the MagTag progress displays. Circuit Roomba sounds interesting. I haven't seen that. Okay. D. Harada's lurking, and so we'll go to Foamy Guy.
All right, thanks, Scott. This week I got a hug for user, I think it's Critic in the Discord. They figured out how to set up the CircuitPython stubs in PyCharm to get it to suggest things. So that's really, really cool. I'm a big user of PyCharm and I hadn't figured that out for myself. So really appreciate that. To GitHub user Lila, Lila, worked on a PR for the LED animation library to add a mask to the sparkle animation, which is really cool. It makes it so you can kind of have different LEDs sparkle differently all under the same animation. So that's really cool. And lastly, to Kevin Thomas again for teaming up with me to work on the IoT trivia app and for getting it published over the weekend. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Foamy Guy. Next up, we have Higher Effect.
Just a group hug to everyone this week, and especially to the folks who are working on the Deep Sleep API, which I'll be using. So, yeah.
Sweet. Thank you. Next up is Jeff.
Likewise, I have a group hug. I'm really thankful for everybody in the community, and it is a pleasure week after week to get to hang out with you guys a little bit.
All right. And next up, we have Jerry.
Yep, and another group hug. Thanks, everybody.
And Katney.
I lost where I was in the document. There we are. So I want to say thanks to all the helpers on the Adafruit Discord. So we have CircuitPython helpers, community helpers, PCB helpers. I want to say thanks to all of them for all the assistance and positivity they provide to every member of the server, new and current alike. They're a huge part of how positive and welcoming this community is, and I wanted to say thanks for that. Thanks to Foamy Guy for more library work. Thanks to Lucer and Telemon on Discord for helping out all over the server, including the CircuitPython channels. Thanks to Dan for all the deep sleep work in CircuitPython. And thanks to all the new folks who are putting in library PRs and reviewing PRs. Those were all the names that were read off earlier during the state of CircuitPython. And there's folks who are commenting who, as Jeff pointed out, have not been leveled up to reviewer yet, but they are working on it. And that is excellent to see. That's what I've got.
Awesome. Thank you, Katney. Okay, next up we have notes from Kevin Thomas. It says, group hugs and hugs to Foamy Guy for working with me to release the ESP32S2 IoT trivia app yesterday. Next up, we have Maker Melissa.
I wanted to give hugs to the folks who submitted boards on CircuitPython.org and a group hug to everyone else.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Next, we have notes from Mark, who says, group hug and a hug to Dan for this Deep Sleep API that I got to test on the weekend. Ooh, and I forgot to time code it. And last up, we have notes from Microdev, who says, hug report to TAC for TinyUF2, Hug report to Dan H for continued work on Deep Sleep API, and hug report to Tanute and Higher Effect for PR reviews. And that's it for hug reports. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Like to hear all the different perspectives we have on what's going well in our community. Next up, we have status updates, which is a chance for us to say a little bit about what we've been working on and what we plan on working on in the coming week. And again, if you have notes, drop them in the notes doc. If you're not going to speak, say that you're lurking, and I will either read stuff off or just skip over you. And I just remembered that yeah, one other thing I wanted to say. Okay. Last week was a short week. We had a US holiday, so I didn't do a whole lot. Mainly odds and ends around the S2 networking. This week I'll get caught up on the S2 I2C issue and hopefully fix them if it's not fixed already. I have folks to check in with that. And I've also still got some pending minor changes to the S2 networking stuff as well. I need to figure out what the appropriate exception to raise from request.get is when it just doesn't work. So I'm going to play around with that. Also hope to test and review the PR for Deep Sleep from Dan. That's going to be my high priority is getting the Deep Sleep stuff in. And once the core is in, I think we may actually be able to parallelize some stuff as well. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was last week I just mentioned that the 2021 planning may happen in December, but I went back and looked, and we didn't actually start that until the 1st of January. So let's just plan on doing that again. I think I switched it last year because over the holidays, like everyone's doing stuff. So expect to see or start thinking about what sort of things you want to see or talk about for CircuitPython in 2021. And we'll kick that off January 1st and get that ball rolling. So that's an update just from the thing that I commented last week. Okay, let's circle back and go to Brent.
Sweet. Working on Minion Continuum and then another project. Minion Continuum still in progress. I have a little bug remaining where the ESP32 S2 implementation doesn't ping back to the server, and I have to look at that. And there's a timeout bug with that as well. But it is working on the ESP32 S2 CPython and ESP32 SPI. I also want to test it with the Ethernet socket, which is a very different implementation, and then work on some unit tests for it since I have a lot of errors to test. I'll be off for like this upcoming week. I want to wrap up my semester, and I'll probably release it when I get back. And in non-CircuitPython related news, I got yet another LoRaWAN hotspot in the mail. I want to test it out, but I'm starting to get like a ton of this networking hardware. It's on my closet right now, just on the floor, and I need a way to organize it. And if anybody in the call or has like experience like with building networking hardware like fixtures, I'm totally open to like suggestions for a small scale server rack or something. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Brent. Next up is Dan.
Okay, well, as everybody's talked about, there's a PR for an initial implementation of Deep Sleep. It just does time-based sleep, not pin-based sleep. But it's working, and I tested it. Lumore tested it. As Lumore expected, the current Deep Sleep current is about 250 or 300 microamps, which is fine. It could be less. There are some things on the MagTag board. This is on the MagTag board. There are some things on the MagTag board which are still powered, which we might think about how not to power later, such as the fact that the e-ink display is still powered up even though it's in deep sleep, and so we might there might be some hardware added to decrease this. The actual current consumption of the ESP32S2 in deep sleep is about a tenth of this, about 25 or 30 microamps. So there's more that can be done.
Are you
waiting? 250. Go ahead.
Are you waiting for the e-ink refresh to finish before you sleep?
I do, because otherwise it looks bad. Or well, no, let me say that a different way. I put a refresh in the CircuitPython program before I go to sleep. I think I also wait. I think I wait in the C code, but you can look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you go to sleep too soon, then you get like it looks funny. Okay, so
Because I think we send a shutdown command to the IC, so I wonder if that's working or not.
Maybe I'm not doing that. Okay.
It should automatically do it when it's done refreshing.
Or even right. That's interesting. Okay. And then one thing that our SAMD21 builds, like both the well, not even Trinket, but any SAMD21 Express builds like Circuit Playground Express and Metro Express and Feather, they were all getting too big in certain languages. And as I mentioned, Jeff trimmed some things in the math library. And in looking at what was still in those builds, I saw that complex arithmetic was still on. And if we turn that off, it saves several thousand bytes. And it's a little sad, but probably very few people are using complex arithmetic, especially on these small boards. So we decided to go ahead, or I decided to turn it off, and I'm waiting for approval from that on the PR. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Okay, next up we have notes from David Gloud, who says, for the PM25, pretending to help Primaroni user and really double-checking the Enviro Plus works with CircuitPython 6. Testing and review of the new version of PM25 UART. Need an official reviewer to have a look. Maybe we should just give you the review bit because you're testing it more than we are. For the future, non-binding, porting the Tetris clock and also mod my Roomba for non-CircuitPython, setting up PyVPN and Pi-hole to help my tennis player daughter feel at home, watch TV when abroad in tournaments. And next up, we have Foamy Guy.
All right. For last week, or really over this long weekend here, I started trying to get used to this Kinesis Advantage. It's kind of a crazy keyboard. If you've ever seen the movie Men in Black, it's the keyboard they use in the Men in Black headquarters, so it's kind of cool, but it's very different than what I'm used to, so it uses your thumbs a lot more. So that's taken a lot of getting used to, but I finally am almost back up to my actual typing speed. In CircuitPython stuff, I tested a PR that I mentioned earlier on the LED animation. It adds that masking to the sparkle animation. I learned the basics of this library Bodo 3, which is for fetching data out of Amazon S3, and I use that for starting work on a commit hash argument in the Blinka CLI that will let you install a version of CircuitPython based on a certain commit, and I hope to finish that up this week. I worked on a couple of different progress displays for the MagTag, one that shows the percentage of translation for the project from the Weblate API, and then one that shows the percentage through the year. And I wrote a guide for those as well. I looked into that Weblate API, so this was the first time really messing with that. It's actually really, really super easy. So if anyone's interested in pulling stats out of Weblate, they make it really easy. I finished up the IoT trivia app with Kevin Thomas, and then for next week, a couple things I want to get into are trying to come up with a scheduling system on the Matrix portal, but I think really this will end up working on all of the portal library devices that will give you an easy way to set up like what you want it to do at certain times of the day on certain days of the week, and then just have it like loop through the list. That way it can kind of show all the stuff you want for any given time of the day, and it will just go through everything it has and start over. It's easy to do all that stuff independently, but I want to kind of get it all together so I can have like a little signage thing for my house. And then last thing I got on my list is I'm going to take a crack at packaging those CircuitPython stubs and trying to deploy them on PyPy so that we can have our PyCharm integration get done super easy. And that's what I got this week. Thanks.
Awesome. And we do have a package name already, CircuitPython-stubs.
Nice.
So I should have access to it. If we don't, we can get it. So that's
cool,
the package name we should use.
Awesome. Yep. I will ping you once I get it, if I get it working.
Cool. All right. And next up is Higher Effect.
Okay. So this past week, I did some bugs in reviewing, so fixed some pin claiming bugs that we were having on the ESP32 S2, which were not allowing, or which were allowing to use pins that were already being used by other peripherals. That ended up being a couple of bugs under the hood that were all doing the same thing. I reviewed some PRs and a new bug on STM32, the Thunder Pack, which is a board that integrates a lithium-ion cell as part of the PCB, which is cool. I replicated the problem that we're having on I2C on the STM32, which is that we're not using the repeated start flag, which is going to require some changes under the hood to fix. And I finally went ahead and closed the STM32F1 port, which had been kind of dragging its feet along for a little while. And ultimately, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it because we just don't have good development boards for the F1 here in the United States. It's mostly used in China. It's mostly used with knockoff clones. And here, it's actually just straight up difficult to get an F1 board that is of the type that can run CircuitPython. So went ahead and closed that. It was a little bit of a bummer of the week for me personally because I got a bunch of chips back from Fab and none of them work, including the one that I was hoping to be a new CircuitPython board. So I've got to go back to the drawing board on that.
Do you mean PCB?
Yeah.
Okay.
What did I say?
You say chips.
Oh yeah, PCBs. Yeah, I'm trying to make a really, really, really tiny STM32 CircuitPython board. Called the Rook. And unfortunately, it's not working. So,
have you figured out why?
I have not. It's something to do with USB. I could have just goofed the PCB maybe. But that said, I've actually also had a bunch of other problems with my USB hub on my desk last week. Yeah. So I probably need to revisit it and just make sure that it wasn't that.
Right.
I've been having all kinds of USB problems this week. So I will figure it out. I haven't plugged it even into my debugger yet. It was more like plug it in, run DFU, it loads up, and then it doesn't work. So that was a bummer. Anyway, this week I'm going to be doing lots of reading on a whole bunch of different stuff because it's all just API delving. So I'll be figuring out what the best solution is for the ESP32S2 pin resets. Got to figure out how to disconnect the IO mux in addition to the GPIO mux. So Scott gave me the reference manual, and I got a little bit into it, but not that much. So that's probably going to be one line of code that I spend a whole bunch of time reading about. I'm going to be looking at better solutions for the I2C and SPI, IT, and DMA APIs because that's actually kind of a similar issue between the I2C repeated start issue, and I'm also implementing a DMA API for SPI on STM32. That's a lot of acronyms. Oh my God. But yes, I'll be looking into there's some stuff that needs to happen for that. And then implementing new modules on the IMX. So looking at, I actually don't even remember if the IMX RTs have a DAC, but if they do, I will put it in. And then also PWM out for the IMX. Mm-hmm. And ESP32S2 TCP server, which I don't know anything about, so I got to read about that too. And that's it for me.
So for the IMX, you could also try the Tiny UF2 version for IMX.
Okay. Tiny UF2, so that's a bootloader, new bootloader?
Correct.
Program on?
Which for the IMX RT is actually the third stage, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Adafruit / Tiny UF2 on GitHub.
Adafruit Tiny UF2.
Yep. And it's the same code base as the ESP32S2 one. It's meant to be our unified UF2 bootloader going forward.
Oh, do we have the STM32 bootloader in there already?
We might. You should take a look.
We've had we keep getting people who are like, oh yeah, you don't have any UF2 support on the STM32, and I was like, no, yeah, we do. Yeah. We do. It just needs to kind of probably be added to whatever repo it needs to be in. But I guess less priority than probably either the IMX or the ESP32 right now. So
right.
I can check that out.
It might have it. I think it does have something else that I can't remember.
Okay.
It might be Nordic.
And then I guess last question for you, Scott.
Mhm.
Do you want me to go and check out the IMX 1050 again? Because that's the last PR that we have for that. We could
it's
just
not a
close
high
it.
priority. The
We just
problem
let
with the
it keep
1050 is it's
rounding out our PR list.
we could also just close it and reopen it when we're going to pick it back up.
Okay.
The problem is that the dev kit has hyper flash by default, and so we would need to figure out the flash config settings for the hyper flash, which would be our first hyper flash thing.
So that's different from the 1060 to the 1050.
Yes. So it's just that the dev, like the way the dev board's connected by default. Like the 1060 has hyper flash on it, but it uses the regular QSpy flash by default.
By default.
But the 1050 is weird, and like the 1050 I think is the first board they did, so they like changed it after that.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that explains all the weird problems I was having with it.
Yeah,
that was
it does
super
really
annoying
weird
part.
things. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's close it for now, and then we'll revisit it when we want it.
Yeah, we should definitely. I think we're gonna do more IMX like going into next year.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So we will want to get back to it, just not imminently.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right.
All right. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Stop talking.
No worries. Next up is Jeff.
So last week I wrote an upcoming guide called Pedal for YouTube, which is using BLE on Blinka and a Raspberry Pi, and that guide went to moderation this morning. You'll probably be able to check it out later this week. Not something I did, but there are signs that ESP IDF is going to take a fix for that SSL verification bug that we found. And I think they're going to base it on what I did, but they thought they saw a bug in my bit flag handling, which is super likely. And then I did a number of smaller items that people have alluded to, such as the build size reductions related to the PAL function. This week, I've got another Blinka project that should turn into a guide. And depending on when some equipment arrives in between, I'm going to take another look at the I2C and Wi-Fi crashes on ESP32S2. Hopefully my debugger will give me good info this time. And fun stuff, I'm building a USB foot switch with a 3D printed enclosure. I'm going to toss a trinket inside. And my two use ideas are as a mute button for conferencing like this, or a YouTube play pause button for when I'm watching a cooking video in the kitchen. Not sure which one of those it will end up finally being, but those are the concepts. And that's what I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. All right, next up is Jerry.
Hi. Well, unfortunately, nothing CircuitPython related to report. Been a long week.
All right, well, I hope it's going okay.
Oh, it is just too many things.
All right, well, hope you work through it.
Thanks.
Okay, next up is Katney.
Hello. So last week, published the beginner boards page for the Which CircuitPython board is right for you guide. It's basically boards that you would start with and why. I am not entirely sure why we didn't add that as soon as we published it, but obviously there's a need for it. So there's now a beginner boards page. So nice. You can point folks who are new to CircuitPython, new to programming, new to electronics, new to anywhere in between, new to Python, whatever, and point them to that page, and they'll get an answer as to which board may work best for them. Tested some PR code and merged a couple PRs, I think. I started a holiday-themed MagTag LED guide. It's simple. It doesn't use networking. It just uses the buttons, and it has 3 different LED animations that it does, and the 4th button turns off the LEDs. There's still some stuff to do with the code. We decided to add an obvious feature, which is text on the screen that explains what the buttons do. Because otherwise you just have to know. So I need to update the code to have sort of a legend on the screen that explains what the buttons do. And then I need to photograph the build and so on and so forth. But I started that last week, got the basic code running. And I successfully dismantled a turkey and cooked half of the important bits for dinner. So after all of that. It turns out we didn't have leftover turkey. We thought we did, and that was what was initially going to be eaten, and that's why it was so frustrating that we ended up with an unexpected turkey. But in the end, it was me versus the turkey, and I won. So, and today, created and shared a calendar to keep track of whom is running the CircuitPython weekly meeting. So that should be in your
We never
inboxes.
mess that up.
Never. So this week, finished up the MagTag LED guide, which at the time was mostly photographing and building the build and videoing usage. However, with the changes to the code, the changes to the features, I need to write more code first. Then next up is a guide for MagTag and the same LED strip. What we're going to do is do cheer lights. However, instead of just displaying the color on the LEDs, it's going to display an animation of that color. So I'll pick 4 or 5 colors, and then when red pops up, instead it'll be red sparkles. And then when green pops up, it'll be a green comet instead of just solid LEDs. So we're taking a little bit of a twist on the cheer lights concept, make it a little more fun. The cheer lights code is done. It's adding the LED animations that needs to be left. And then that guide should be relatively quick because the build is the same as the guide I'm doing right now. So I can just mirror that page in, and then the usage will be different because there's no pressing of the buttons, and obviously it does different things. So, but it'll be faster than this one. And then if I have any more time this week, update the SGP30 guide with the STEM and QT rev. If I don't have time this week, that'll be next week. And also write a guide for the SGP40, which is an upgrade that apparently, even though it's just next gen, it's entirely different. So needs its own guide. And I believe that's all I've got going on.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. Next up, I have notes from Kevin Thomas, who says, last week, Foamy Guy and I completed our CircuitPython IoT Trivia app, which is an ESP32S2 REST app, which provides a number of helper libraries with attached unit tests to work with an OLED display and interact with an online open source trivia API. This repo is designed to help others to use these labs to build their own extensive IoT apps with CircuitPython and the ESP32S2. This week, I'm presenting a talk at the Microbit Live conference on Friday, where I demo the Study Buddy framework, which builds out a step-by-step instruction set for educators to creating talking educational databases and quizzes to build into their curriculum with the V2 Microbit. And next up we have notes from Microdev, who says, last week submitted draft PR for the I2C peripheral support on the ESP32S2. Updated the MicroS2 GitHub repo, added examples and a guide. And this week started tests on the new Deep Sleep API, figuring out OTA updates for the ESP32S2. I will continue my work on I2C peripheral and adding a guide for the UF2 bootloader on the MicroS2. With that, let's kick it over to Melissa.
Hello. Let's see. Last week I worked on the Web Serial ESP tool, and I have it communicating with the ESP32 and the ESP32S2 chipset successfully. I fixed some Braincraft hat issues by rolling back to an older display driver. I fixed a few bugs that I discovered in the MagTag library when helping some folks with their projects. And I fixed a sorting issue on the CircuitPython.org website, and I have a PRN for that at the moment. And this week I'm going to finish getting the ESP tool download functionality working, and I'll get started on the portal library unification project. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Okay. Next up, we have, well, that's it for status updates. And now we're going to the final section, in the weeds. This is a chance for us to have open-ended discussion about any sort of topic. If you have a topic, please drop them in the notes under the In the Weeds section along with your username. And so the first one we have is from Microdev, who wasn't able to make the meeting. They're half a world away, so it's a pretty hard time. So Microdev says support for OTA updates. So for those folks who don't know, OTA is over the air. And this is how you could potentially update CircuitPython via the Wi-Fi. And there's one of the reasons the flash on the ESP32S2 is so small is because we actually leave room for a second OTA. Like the way OTA works is you basically have two copies of CircuitPython or whatever code at once, and you have the ability to like switch from one to the other. So I think the way that we should implement it, and I'm hoping Microdev listens to this afterwards, I think that the right way to go about it is just to add like a ESP specific native module that basically says like write these bytes to the other OTA partition and then switches over to it. So yeah, I think it's that simple, but there's all these like weird corner cases about like how do you make sure that the code that you're actually trying to run next is actually valid. That's a challenge, and what happens if it doesn't start up, that sort of thing. So know that Microdev's thinking about that. If you have ideas or thoughts on that, please let us know. And I don't think there's a over-the-air issue, so that's probably the best place to start actually is to create an issue for over-the-air, and then we can have all our ideas there. Any other thoughts from folks? Nope. Okay, let's move on then. Let's go to Foamy Guy.
All right. I think this is probably fairly quick. As I was working on the Blinky CLI tool, one of the things that it does is pick out the updates for whichever device is connected. So it needs to be able to figure out which device is connected. And as I was kind of making some scripts that give it a way to map all those different devices together with their boot out text file, I noticed this one SparkFun Quick Micro. It has two variants, one with the flash chip and one without. So it's kind of like the Hackexpress devices from Adafruit. I think that's the idea. And as far as I could tell, both of them have the same, I forgot the name of the variable, but that ultimately ends up in boot out.txt. It might be this one that Dan put in here, MicroPy HW board name. Whatever it is, though, there's a variable in there. It gets combined with some things and put into boot out. These ones seem to have the same. And so theoretically, there'd be no way for an automated tool to tell the difference between the two devices. So I'm interested in making a change to one or the other to basically make it unique. Put the with flash or without flash or something. That way they'll have separate boot out files, and then our tool will be able to tell them apart. So mostly I was just looking to see if there was any thoughts or ideas on how to do that. It looks like Dan has put one in there, and then just see if that was okay for me to do, because I don't really have a device, so I can't test it. I'm not sure. It's probably low risk, but I didn't know if that was something that would make sense for me to do, or if it's better to just leave it alone.
I think it's a mistake that they have the same board name.
Okay.
So those I think, I don't know who submitted those. I think maybe SparkFun did, but I'm not sure. The other thing is that it has the same product ID, USB product ID, which also we tend to distinguish boards based on that. And SparkFun could allocate another. They have their own vendor ID, so they have plenty of product IDs, and they could change that, though it may be kind of late for that in terms of like what the bootloader shows, for instance, or something, or the product ID, the USB product PID, it's called the PID, is presented by the bootloader. But that's another thing but you'd have to ask them about that.
I gotcha. Yep. And it looks like Jeff's putting in the chat, we found a couple more devices, and I did the stuff that I have looked through so far was all atmelcmd. So this was the only one I noticed, although I guess PyGamer should be an atmelcmd. I maybe missed that one somehow. But there may be others. This was the only one I found in the atmelcmd family, but there may be NRF and others. I didn't check into those just yet.
Yeah, so I think Jeff makes a good point that if we do want them to be unique, we should add a CI check to make sure. But the other thing I would say is we could also just put the board ID in the output. So you don't have to have a mapping. Like you could just say like Adafruit PyGamer parentheses and then the like actual board ID. Because it's not like we hide it. Like it's in the file name.
In the file name, I'm not sure I follow all the way. In the file name.
Like it's okay. It's okay if we had if the board ID was in the serial output or in the boot out file.
I see.
Like
Okay.
it would be okay for us to just say like this is human friendly name parentheses ID of it.
I
Like
see what you're saying.
the directory name, yeah.
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 And
Okay.
then you don't have to
Folder
have
name.
a mapping.
Yeah, that would be really nice actually. I mean, I'm definitely all for that. I don't know that I know how to make that change across all the devices, but if that's an option that's on the table, I'd definitely be in favor of that.
Well, I think it's available as a board. It's just board is the name of the macro. So you could just modify where the hardware board name thing is and is printed and include board as well. It's going to add one more string because I don't know if we have it already. But it seems like a useful thing that we should give programmatic access to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will. I'll poke around a little bit. I may ping you if I end up with questions, but I think I got the gist of how to do that. So I'll give that a try, and that's nice because it will be a fix across the board, not just specific to this one SparkFun device.
Right. And I do actually have like this big vision for like a microcontroller build system, and like I would love to have unique board identifiers that work across like outside of CircuitPython as well. So
gotcha.
It'd be cool if these were just like the board identifier that everybody uses. Would be epic.
Wait, what? You want this for a universal build system?
Yeah.
I just want to press you on what that is. That sounds pretty interesting.
It's this idea that I've had of using Python to generate Ninja files.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I want to have like data behind it that just says like if you have a STM such and such, like here's all the basic compiler flags that you use.
Yeah, to piggyback on that a little bit, I don't know if this is the same idea you have in mind, but I've been toying around with an idea for some kind of server. So it would present probably a web interface to use, and then it would let you customize some of the stuff you want about your build. And then it would, on the server side, it would make a custom build of CircuitPython and then serve it back to you. That way you could like set up the display if you wanted on a device that doesn't ordinarily have a built-in display, or you could turn on and off different features and stuff like that. I don't know if that's similar to what you're thinking of, but I would love to see something like that down the line as well, if so.
I'm still... Oh, sorry, guys.
I don't think it's quite the same, but that's definitely an idea that people have kicked around like since the very beginning, and I'd be curious to see if people use it.
Yeah. All right, cool. I will. I'll poke around then on the boot out stuff and see what I can come up with.
Cool. All right, and it seems like it. So thank you everybody for joining the meeting. Let me take one more time code. This has been the CircuitPython Weekly for November 30th, 2020. It happens every week, almost every week, on the Adafruit Discord server, which you can join by going to adafru.it/discord. We're in there all week, but we're only in the voice channel at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, when this meeting happens normally. It does shift around a little bit with U.S. holidays and, in fact, the winter holidays that are coming up. So subscribe to the calendar that has all of the kind of quote-unquote official dates for the meetings. We already have a plan for... We talked last week about over Christmas, so we will not do a meeting between Christmas and New Year's, but there's only a one meeting missed between the two. kind of the way that everything's sorted out. So take a look at that, and we'll make sure and let people know in the Discord as well. If you want to get pinged about meeting updates, you can join the CircuitPythonistas role by just asking one of us to add you, and then you'll get notified about the meeting updates as well. This meeting has been recorded. It's going to be posted to YouTube at youtube.com/Adafruit, and that audio stream gets redistributed as a podcast as well. So if you ever miss a meeting, know that that's there. Next week is normal time, so just a week from now. And I think that's it. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.